GMS Racing could be returning to NASCAR in the Craftsman Truck Series in 2026, and NASCAR might also be repaving and turning another mile-and-a-half track into a Superspeedway-like track like Atlanta. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump through those really quickly. We're going to start by talking about Kyle Larson, as Kyle Larson put up a dominant clinic at Bristol Motor Speedway and would lead 411 of the 500 laps. This is the first driver to lead back-to-back races with 400-plus laps led in events at Bristol since Bobby Allison did it in 1972. Kyle Larson, the fall race of 2024, I believe, led 462 of those laps, and today he led 411. Combined the last two events, Kyle Larson led 873 of the last 1,000 laps, and he added the Xfinity Series laps total. He's led over 1,000 laps in 3 of the last 4 races that he has entered. Kyle Larson flat out dominated this race, and it's pretty impressive to be on the same league as one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR Cup Series history. Even though the race wasn't that great, and we talked about it in a video earlier today, I think that Larson getting that accomplishment is still a really big deal, all things considered. Even if the race sucked, I think it's a pretty big deal and accomplishment to see Kyle Larson do that and lead 411 laps in the event. Very impressive, in my opinion. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Bahrain Grand Prix. For the Long Beach Grand Prix took place and the Food City 500 took place at Bristol Motor Speedway, you had the Bahrain Grand Prix this morning. And it was dominated for most part by Oscar Piastri. Oscar Piastri won the pole, got a really strong and really fantastic start, and he just pulled away from the rest of the field. Lando Norris, who started in 6th, got all the way up to 3rd position, I believe, by lap number 3 or 4 of the event, but faded back a little bit and actually got a penalty for an infringement at the start because he had a false start at the beginning and would get a 5-second time penalty and would drop back to 4th place. There would be a safety car that happened on lap 32 because there was some contact, I believe, by Yuki Tsunoda and maybe Liam Lawson, I'm pretty sure. Debris got on the track, and that would bring out the safety car. And then they went back green for a while with some close racing up front, but it was really difficult to pass like it always is in Formula 1. And Oscar Piastri pulled out the near 5 or 6 second lead. And coming out the final corner, Oscar Piastri would dominate and win his second race of 2025. And is only 1 or 2 points behind Lando Norris in the championship, as Lando Norris did finish 3rd in the event, even after getting a penalty. Congratulations, Oscar Piastri. A well-earned and a well-deserved win for him. He had the fastest car all weekend, dominated. I think he's got a really good chance to win the championship this year. He's already won 2 races, 4 career races in Formula 1 at this point. Congratulations, Oscar, on picking up the win in this year's Bahrain Grand Prix. A well-earned victory. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Tony Stewart. Now, earlier this evening, Tony Stewart, of course, competed full-time in the NHRA in the Top Fuel Dragster event, and Tony Stewart has finally won his first ever NHRA Top Fuel race. Tony Stewart, of course, has accomplished a lot in motorsports. He's won a lot of dirt races. He's won a lot of big dirt events. He's won 3 NASCAR Cup Series championships. He's competed in the Indy 500 and been very competitive. He's won poles for the Indianapolis 500. He has won about everything that he's gotten behind the wheel up now, and now he has an NHRA win in the Top Fuel class. He had won the secondary class a couple years ago, but to see that Tony Stewart was able to go out there and win a Top Fuel event, that is absolutely amazing and fantastic to see. And it's a big deal for Tony Stewart because he's been doing this for so long. He's been in motorsports for a long time. He does look pretty healthy too. And to see Tony Stewart at the rightful age of 53 years old get a win like that, it's a massive deal for Tony Stewart. I know he's no longer in the sport, which I don't think has any sort of interest in being in the sport of NASCAR anymore, but as being a former guy in the sport, congratulations to Tony Stewart on winning an NHRA event. I think that's a massive deal for him nonetheless. And again, I think it's pretty exciting to see Tony Stewart win at Las Vegas in the 4-wide event. Congratulations to him on winning the Top Fuel event in the NHRA at Las Vegas. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Long Beach Grand Prix. While you had the Food City 500 going on at Bristol Motor Speedway, you also had the Long Beach Grand Prix going on. And it started off very, very strong, with Kyle Kirkwood getting a really strong run and being able to take the lead early in the event. And Kyle Kirkwood started pulling away. You had different strategies going on, though. You had the guys that were on the soft tires early come down pit road, and Christian Lundgaard would actually emerge and have the race lead for quite a bit. He was leader here on the strategy of staying out on the harder tires at the beginning, while you had the soft tire guys trying to maintain. And really, to me, this race was between two drivers, Kyle Kirkwood and Alex Palou. Alex Palou got a really good pit stop early in the race, and he jumped up to second position and would keep up with Kyle Kirkwood all day. But Kyle Kirkwood, unlike a lot of times, actually would hold off a hard-charging Alex Palou, would pull out a pretty big lead and almost won the race by 4.5 seconds. And coming off the corner, Kyle Kirkwood picks up his second ever Long Beach Grand Prix win, his first one since 2023, and picked up his third career IndyCar Series victory and his first win since the National Grand Prix in 2023. Kyle Kirkwood has shown a lot of potential early this season. He's second in the points so far, and I think he's been doing overall a fantastic and really good job this year. And I think he's earned the right to get into that seat. He, last year, of course, did not win a race in IndyCar, but I expected him to come back and be a lot stronger. And so far this year, I think he's proven it. He's done a very good job early in the year, and I've been really impressed to see that Kyle Kirkwood has been able to accomplish a lot of the stuff that he has been able to accomplish this year. And I think he's a guy that really realistically has a chance and opportunity to beating the guy of Alex Palou, because Palou's been the guy to beat so far this year. We're really been wondering who's going to be that guy who can go up against Alex Palou. I think Kyle Kirkwood may be that guy who has a chance and opportunity to do that. So we'll see what happens throughout the remainder of the year. But I think this is going to be a really fun championship between Kirkwood and Palou throughout the remainder of the year and seasons. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Harmon Racing. Now, there's been a rumor that was surfacing on Twitter and X over the course of the last couple days, a rumor about a potential possibility of Harmon Racing shutting down their program. This, of course, wasn't in response to them withdrawing from the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Bristol Motor Speedway. However, what wasn't really brought up in that post that was brought up was the fact that Harmon Racing was not running Bristol Motor Speedway so they could try to focus on going to Rockingham. And Harmon Racing had to release a statement on Saturday confirming that they were not shutting down their program at this time. And the reason that they were not running Bristol in the first place so they could fully focus on trying to get prepared for the Xfinity Series race at Rockingham Speedway. That actually makes a lot of sense to kind of go away from doing Bristol, a race where you might have a chance and opportunity of not making the event, and instead go into a racetrack like Rockingham, where I believe that they tested and actually showed some decent speed in the test. Harmon Racing, the reason people bring this up is because Harmon Racing is a team that's not one of the fastest organizations out there, and I think a lot of people want to see this team have a lot of success. The problem is Harmon Racing has kind of struggled a little bit in recent years, but I think it's good that Harmon Racing isn't going to be gone. We want to see teams like Harmon Racing out there, because if you just have the top teams like Junior Motorsports and Joe Gibbs Racing being at the top of their games and leagues, and you don't have any competition to some of those smaller teams that could have the chance and opportunity to go up there and compete, what do you have at this point? So I think it's really good that they're not shutting down their program. I get why there was a little bit of confusion there, because they were responding and some people thought they were, but I think you got to be careful what you post, especially the ARCA Fans News Central account that posted that. You got to be really, really careful. They did take responsibility, which I do appreciate them taking responsibility, because they at least admitted they screwed up jumping to conclusions on that front. Just be careful what you post sometimes, because you can get a lot of people that are not happy with you. To me, it's good, though, that Harmon Racing isn't shutting their program down, though, and now they're going to fully focus on Rockingham, which the thing they should be doing is, like a lot of teams, of course, we got Casey Kane coming back this week, which is really fun, but I think that make sure, be careful what you do on social media. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cadillac Formula 1. Now, we've already talked about the Formula 1 race for the Bahrain Grand Prix, but before the Bahrain Grand Prix took place, there's been some reports coming out in regards to Cadillac Formula 1. And Nathan Brown from the Indy Star put out a very interesting article in regards to what the Cadillac Formula 1 team could be looking like for 2026. And he asked over the weekend on 3 drivers whose names have been linked to the Cadillac Formula 1 program. The 3 drivers are Alex Palou, Pat O'Ward, and I believe Colton Herta. Now, Alex Palou did say that he's not fully interested at this time, and he's really hoping that Colton Herta does get the chance and opportunity to go over and race in Formula 1 in 2026. Pat O'Ward has also been asked about the opportunity to go race for the Cadillac team, and he says he has to kind of look at it, but he also has to look at his McLaren contract, which, of course, he just signed a multi-year extension, I believe, at the end of last year, so he'd have to break that contract to go to Cadillac. Now, obviously, there's a lot of talk about which drivers are going to go to the Cadillac Formula 1 program. Nobody really knows at this point who is going over there yet. We've heard rumors of Sergio Perez, whose name has been heavily linked to that program, and we've also heard that Valtteri Bottas has been linked to that team as well. I'm going to start by talking about Sergio Perez. Look, Sergio Perez is not an awful race car driver, as some will claim he is. Was he out of his league in the Red Bulls? Absolutely. I think he was really not doing a good job and wasn't getting the best out of equipment. But I think we're finding out right now, since Sergio left, that the drivers that got behind the wheel of the Red Bulls have not looked that great either. I mean, Yuki Tsunoda did get points today in the race in Bahrain, but generally just wasn't that fantastic in the first race that took place in Japan. And I think that we're finding this out. Now, Sergio, should he be in the car? I get that a lot of American fans like Sergio, but personally, I don't think Sergio should be considered. Same thing goes for Daniel Ricciardo. As much as it'd be cool for Daniel Ricciardo to come back to Formula One, I'd rather see him in NASCAR. There are rumors about him coming over racing for RCR in the Cup Series during the Daytona 500. That obviously did not end up happening for this year, and that kind of got denied. But I think it'd be cool for Ricciardo to do something else, but not race in Formula One. I think Colin Herta makes the most sense to me. Colin Herta absolutely should be in Formula One. He's way too good to not be in Formula One. And there's some drivers that are in Formula One right now that, in my opinion, do not deserve to be in Formula One. And I think someone like Colin Herta could go over there and do great. Same with Alex Palou. Alex Palou is a fantastic IndyCar driver. Outside of not winning the Indy 500 at this point, what does he have left to lose? He's won 2 or 3 championships, looking for his 4th championship and his 3rd championship in a row, and he's got a chance to do that this year. So I think at this point it's going to be interesting. I believe Philippe Jurkovic's name has been brought up as a possibility for the C2, which I think Jurkovic would be a really good option. We'll have to wait and see who gets considered for the Cadillac C. But these are some of the names that have been linked, and I think these are some of the possibilities we could see for 2026 with the Cadillac program. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Layne Riggs. Now, after the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race took place at Bristol Motor Speedway, Layne Riggs was not very happy after the race. He did say he was happy that they were able to recover at the end of the event, but Layne Riggs was not very happy about the PJ1 on the racetrack. He basically says that the PJ1 really ruined Bristol Motor Speedway, and it made it basically a bottom feeder track, and you couldn't make passes on the outside until later in the event once the tires really came in. Now, the one thing about Bristol Motor Speedway we all know, the old school Bristol Motor Speedway, you always would run the bottom of the racetrack. Yes, you could make moves and get behind somebody, though, and have the opportunity to make the move. One of the biggest problems we see with the next-gen cars and the Craftsman trucks, however, is it's very, very difficult to pass. You can't get as close to the cars in front of you or the trucks in front of you, because if you try to bump them, there's a really good chance and possibility you're not going to be able to move to the outside and make that move and get around them. You're not really going to move them up the track. You see that in the Xfinity Series, and it works in the Xfinity Series, but it doesn't really work in the Cup Series or the Truck Series currently at the moment. I think both series really do need an overhaul on getting their racing products at least a little bit better. But as for this, I do understand Layne's frustration. And Layne, the last couple times, has been kind of right about some of the things that he said. I get his frustration 100% because you want to be able to be good. Layne, of course, won the last time we were here. And, of course, his teammate Chandler Smith went on to win. While Layne has been very good this year, he's had some bad luck and has cost him chances and opportunities to win races at this time. I want to see Layne Riggs do good. And again, I do understand his frustration because I do personally believe that the car can be a lot better, and I think the racing product could be a lot better if some things were changed with the next-gen car and even the Truck Series package. But I don't know if anything's going to change at this point. I'm not sure what they're going to do for the lower series, but I think the PJ1 does work at Bristol, and it gets a bottom feeder track, because if we didn't have the PJ1, it'd be top heavy, and I get maybe you can go to the bottom, but the top is so heavily dominant that it's really difficult to pass, and you can't really get to the bottom. So that's some of the issues you would have getting rid of the PJ1. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Bubba Wallace. Now, over the weekend on Saturday, Bubba Wallace is actually finally able to respond to the media in regards to what happened at Darlington the prior week. And he spoke about the contact with Kyle Larson. Bubba Wallace basically did say that Kyle Larson had checked up when Tyler Reddick had hit the outside wall. Bubba did not see at the time that Kyle Larson was checking up because Tyler Reddick had gotten into the outside wall, and Bubba Wallace, of course, ran into the back of Kyle Larson. There obviously was a lot of talk about this over the weekend. There was a lot of conspiracy theories around this whole situation, basically people saying that Bubba Wallace had intentionally wrecked Kyle Larson to try to help Tyler Reddick win, so that Tyler Reddick could have the chance and opportunity to be Bubba Wallace's best friend Ryan Blaney at the time. Of course, Ryan Blaney would end up losing the race to Denny Hamlin, and Tyler Reddick, I believe, would finish 5th in the race after getting into the outside wall. Meanwhile, other people were trying to say that Kyle Larson intentionally brought out the caution to help William Byron get back in the lead, which William Byron would end up finishing in 2nd. To me, it was just an accident. I don't think there was any intention whatsoever. I think this whole thing got so blown out of proportion on social media because obviously people think that Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson hate each other, which they do not hate each other, by the way. I think they're friends on and off the racetrack, and I don't really understand why people think Bubba Wallace dislikes Kyle Larson. I get Bubba wasn't happy about what happened in 2021, but I personally think that this whole thing got so blown out of proportion. It was just a racing incident. You're going to have racing incidents from time to time that are going to cause controversies like this. I just think this whole thing was really frustrating to watch sometimes because sometimes you have people that do make a lot of sense in these situations, and then you have situations like this where some people just go haywire and they don't really understand what they're talking about. To me personally, I just think it was a racing deal. It was a racing incident, and I think this whole thing got blown way out of proportion, and I feel bad for both drivers because there was no intention in any way, shape, or form. Larson was trying to get the fastest lap, by the way, for people wondering why he actually went back out on the track, and trying to get some chemistry with this team, especially since he did have a new pit crew, which actually benefited him because he did win the Cup Series race at Bristol this weekend. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Connor Zilisch and William Sawalich. Now, if you watch the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Bristol Motor Speedway, you obviously saw that Kyle Larson dominated that race as well and led 277 of the 300 laps. But there's a big incident that took place around 100 laps ago in the race. It all started when Justin Allgaier and Mason Massey made contact. Justin Allgaier came down the racetrack a little bit, and Mason Massey was there, who, by the way, was 2 or 3 laps down at that point in the race, and spun out, and basically there was some contact right behind him as Connor Zilisch would actually check up, basically avoid the situation. Mason Massey and William Sawalich, for whatever reason, decided not to hit the brakes, went ARCA brakes into them, and not only destroyed the rear bumper of Connor Zilisch's car, but William Sawalich's day would come to end, and instead of potentially getting a top 10 by using his brain, he would unfortunately follow the race because he had a lot of damage on the rear of the car. And Connor Zilisch was not very happy about what happened, where he basically said, it seems like it's every single week between me and him out on the racetrack. These two obviously do have a pretty big rivalry from ARCA last year. We saw these two get in some incidents. We go back to Iowa, and these guys raced against each other. But I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about William Sawalich more than anything. William Sawalich was having a very good run at Bristol Motor Speedway, and it was a much-needed run, and he made that mistake. And he has been having a horrendous season in 2025. He's been about as bad as Shane Van Gisbergen has been in the NASCAR Cup Series this year. He's just not been good. In the last 5 races, his average finish is like 32nd or 33rd, and he hasn't scored a single top 10 finish since the 3rd or 4th race of the season. He has been in the back of the field. He's 22nd in the points currently at the moment, and is the worst full-time rookie we have at this time. I think I said this in the offseason, but I personally don't think that William Sawalich was ready to move up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And I said the same thing about Taylor Gray, but Taylor Gray has looked way better, and Brandon Jones is a championship contender this year. I think that he's just been way out to lunch, way under par, and has struggled immensely this year. He's just not shown any sort of potential in 2025, and I really hope he does improve, because we saw that from Ty Gibbs. He's been improving. He was struggling immensely this year in Cup, and he's shown some improvement, but right now, I just think at this time that William Sawalich was out for lunch going into the year, and again, I don't think he should have been this year in the Xfinity Series. I think he should have gone to trucks, because he ran really well in ARCA, but that 18 car is so dominant, deficient, that you can really block some of those efficiencies you have in that car. To me, I think Sawalich should have been running full-time trucks. He was not ready this year for Xfinity, and I think he's really proving it by struggling as much as he has, because he has not been that good this year in NASCAR so far. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Fox once again. Now, I have avoided talking about Fox on this channel over the course of the last couple of weeks, but Fox's coverage once again for another week in a row was absolutely horrid. Let's go back to the Craftsman Truck Series race from Friday night. I think that was actually the best race of the weekend, but Fox was not paying attention at all to what was going on. They were having spelling mistakes throughout the event. Jamie Little, she did not know what was going on throughout the race. I mean, Michael Waltrip had to correct her and basically get her on track. When Michael Waltrip is telling you about what's going on and is focusing a lot better, you definitely got yourself a little bit of a problem. And they missed a key point of the race. The big crash that happened with Frankie Muniz, Ty Majeski, Brandon Jones, and Stewart Friesen, they completely missed that wreck, basically. They had terrible replays, and at a half-mile track, there's no reason you should be missing that wreck. And the commentary was just so mundane and so freaking boring. It was terrible coverage all around. Then you get to the Cup Series race, and there's no interest whatsoever. They're missing pit stops. They're missing critical moments. There's no information going on. Shane Van Gisbergen went to the garage in this race about halfway through after the crash that had happened. We found out through social media he went through the garage. They never mention it on the Fox broadcast. Look, I get that I'm not in the broadcast situation. I've never broadcasted a race in my life. But I think there's a lot of people in this industry that can do a lot better job than what Fox is doing right now. I've said this for a while. NASCAR Productions needs to take control of these broadcasts immediately. It needs to happen right now. Because I don't think what they're doing right now at Fox is good at all. It's really hurting the viewership, and I think it's really hurting what people are seeing. We've had good ratings generally this year, but I think some people are just fed up with the broadcast. I mean, look at long-term fans that come back who haven't been fans for a while. They come back and see Fox like it's been now, and they're just like, why am I watching this? What's the point of watching this? The coverage has been terrible all year long so far. Mike Joy's doing the best he can, but I think Mike Joy is going to retire in the near future. So I'm worried that Jamie Little, she's going to go in the booth, and Jamie Little is just terrible as a lead broadcaster. Where's Eric Brennan? Why is he not calling the races right now? He's way too good to not be calling races. To me, the broadcasts have just been bad all year long, and they've been getting worse and worse and worse. You look at IndyCar. Their coverage has been really, really good because they're in-house. I mean, it's so bad that the CW, who's been doing remote broadcasts for the last 5 or 6 weeks, their coverage is so much better there because NASCAR produces it. We need to see better broadcasting. And Fox has been doing a god-awful job this year. It's been atrocious. It's been really, really bad. And things need to change really, really soon because I'm getting tired of the lackadaisical and terrible coverage we've been seeing from Fox. It's been a joke. It's been abysmal. It's been atrocious. And personally, I think things need to change really soon because otherwise fans are going to stop watching the broadcast on Fox and they're going to do something else. I can't wait for Amazon to come in, and I can't wait for TNT to come in and NBC come in, so I think those broadcasts are going to be way better than what we've been seeing from Fox throughout this year because they've been bad and atrocious and not been good for at least a few years overall. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Long Beach. Now, we've already talked about the Long Beach Grand Prix from IndyCar, but there was a posted service from Brian Nolan from Stretch earlier today, and it showed that Ben Kennedy, who of course is one of the higher-ups in NASCAR, and I believe the senior VP of NASCAR currently at the moment, he was apparently at Long Beach earlier today. Now, this is certainly very, very interesting, but this is very interesting for a couple reasons. Ben Kennedy is one of the higher-ups, obviously, in NASCAR, but Ben Kennedy does have affiliation. Now, I think one of the reasons that Ben Kennedy was at this race was because of IMSA. Why did I bring up IMSA? Well, NASCAR does have ownership of IMSA currently at the moment. Have had ownership of IMSA since around 2013. In 2014, when the merger took place in the mid-2010s. So that's one of the reasons why Ben Kennedy was there. But you all remember the rumors last year. There was a lot of talk early in the year in 2024 that NASCAR was rumored at one point, I believe in early April, to be going to Long Beach and maybe buying up the Long Beach Grand Prix event from IndyCar. There was a lot of rumors about IndyCar selling the event, and then about a week or so later, a couple days later, Jerry Forsythe, who owned half the event, bought majority of the event and took over ownership and control. And then once again, rumors started circulating once again about the event being sold, and Roger Penske came in and took complete control of the event, at least in recent years. Now, obviously, of course, Roger Penske is working very much in NASCAR. He has ownership stake with Team Penske, of course. So what is the possibility of NASCAR racing in Long Beach? Well, it is certainly possible, but I think one of the reasons you're seeing this happen is because NASCAR is trying to negotiate a Southern California event right now. We obviously know that Auto Club Speedway is not expected to make a comeback in 2026 or even 2027. In fact, even though some people talk about them trying to find a way to get funding out there and get the track done, the track really, especially after how much land they sold it for like $560 or $570 million, it sounds like, I just don't see them having a race at Auto Club, and I think that track is eventually going to go down. They've already built up the warehouse around it. You got to take it down the grandstands if you're going to build this short track, and you got to get rid of the garages and build a new garage. You have to build it outside of the track, and there's almost no room to have racing down there. There's obviously rumors about going to San Diego next year, and I think, especially with rumors of Chicago in their final year with the street course race, I think it's very likely going to be the last time that we're going to see a race at Chicago. But we are hearing that Chicago might also be coming back for 2026, which I think would be really exciting and fun if that could happen. But when I look at the Long Beach situation, I want to see racing at Long Beach. I think it'd be really, really fun and awesome. But I also understand why some fans probably would not want it, because we've already seen a lot of these street course races too. And I don't want to see 2 street courses on the schedule, especially if we do get the race in San Diego, like it's heavily rumored currently at the moment. So I think we're going to have to kind of wait and see what happens in regards to this, and see what happens in regards to the future of Long Beach right now, and NASCAR's future in Southern California. But we know NASCAR is certainly interested in having a race in Southern California. We'll just have to wait and see what NASCAR does in regards to the Southern California market, and see if they do have a race in the Southern California market in the not-so-distant future. We'll be keeping an eye on that for sure going on soon. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Denny Hamlin. Now, earlier this week, this is a clip that surfaced from Bob Pockrass. And basically, because Bob Pockrass, of course, is at the Long Beach Grand Prix, we saw a video surface from NASCAR.com while Denny Hamlin, of course, was at the event. And Denny Hamlin basically kind of spoke about the long-term future, was asked by media members in the industry about how long he will race in NASCAR going forward, especially considering Denny Hamlin is 44 years old. He talked about the fact that Mark Martin was still competing for wins around the age of 50 years old. Mark Martin, of course, did win races in 2009. When he turned 50, won 4 or 5 races for Hendrick Motorsports, and was still competing for victories in the early 2010s as well, and then retired in 2013. And then Kevin Harvick, of course, at the age of 47 years old, was winning races in the NASCAR Cup Series. He won at Michigan. He also won at Richmond in 2022, which were the final wins of Kevin Harvick's NASCAR Cup Series career before he did retire at the end of 2023. Denny Hamlin does say that he's not really sure how long he's going to race in the sport, but we know Denny Hamlin is nearing the end of his career. Now, going into the 2025 season, I would have predicted that Denny Hamlin was going to retire from the sport completely and go do some ownership stake or focus on the lawsuit that's going on currently at the moment. But I've changed my mind on that front. I do think Denny Hamlin is still very competitive at this point right now, and I think that Denny Hamlin is still way too good to retire from the sport at this time. He's been super, super fast and super strong early in the year. Denny Hamlin is currently second in the points right now. I believe he's only like 25 or 30 points outside of the points lead right now with William Byron still leading the standings. And Denny Hamlin has only had like 1 or 2 finishes outside the top 20 this year. And I think he's got a really good opportunity here to win a championship. But that age cliff could happen at any given moment in time. You could be performing very, very well and performing really good, and then the next minute you start falling off and your performances start really going away very, very quickly. But I think that Denny Hamlin does have a few years left. I think regardless, Hamlin won't be racing into his 50s. I don't see Denny Hamlin racing to the end of the decade. So you kind of cut it off at this point. I think Denny Hamlin retires around 2027 or 2028 at the latest. I think 2025 he will come back next, or 26 I should say. I think he returns. He's performing very, very good at this moment. So I think it'll be the late 2020s when he does retire from the sport. But I think he's been really good at this point and been doing a fantastic job this year. Then again, I just don't see Denny Hamlin retiring, at least for the near future right now. Do I think there's a chance he could? For sure. And I know Denny Hamlin's kind of spoke about the possibility of making starts in his own cars with 2311 Racing, but I'm not sure what's going to happen there. But as for Hamlin, he's been doing really, really good in this series. He's still got a chance to win races in Cup, and I think he's going to want to continue doing that for at least the foreseeable future. So we'll see how long Denny Hamlin does decide to continue racing in the sport. But to me, I think Hamlin's going to stick around at least for the near future, and I think he's going to want to focus on trying to win a championship finally. I think those chances are definitely rescinding, and I think it's going to be going away soon because a lot of people, that age cliff happens in the mid-40s, happened to Jeff Gordon, happened to Corey Dale Jr., kind of happened to Jimmy Johnson as well. We're just going to have to wait and see how long Denny Hamlin wants to stick around. But I think of Hamlin's age, he does have a few years left, but I don't think he has much long in his career, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Rockingham Speedway. Now, We obviously know that the NASCAR Xfinity Series and Truck Series is making a return for the first time since 2004 for the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and for the first time the Truck Series will be back there since 2013 when Kyle Larson, or 2012 I should say, when 2013, when Kyle Larson won the second race there, and then of course Casey Kane won the first race there in 2012. But there have been a lot of talks about whether NASCAR could potentially make the Cup Series go there in the near future. Well, there was an article that surfaced earlier today, I believe from the Charlotte Observer, and Adam Stern had quoted some stuff from that article as well, where there's been some talk about NASCAR hosting a Cup race at Rockingham Speedway. And this sounds like, according to what Ben Kennedy said, that a Cup race at Rockingham Speedway is something not out of the realm of possibility, and it could host a Cup race in the future. And according to what Ben Kennedy says, it sounds like it's on the radar currently at the moment right now. Now, the last time the Cup Series did race in Rockingham Speedway was in 2004. Of course, with the Furco lawsuit, it took place around 2002 to 2003. They lost one of their dates at the end of 2003, and then, of course, they would lose their date at the end of 2004, as their date will be replaced by a second Texas date, which obviously now Texas only has one day currently at the moment, and North Wilkesboro's gotten one of their dates back for the All-Star race. I think Rockingham Speedway absolutely deserves a NASCAR Cup Series event. I've been wanting Rockingham Speedway to be on the schedule since they granted a lot of those grants to a lot of those tracks so they could have events happening there. I think the track would actually put on some really solid racing, and I think even though we've seen the track repaved over the last year or so, we saw some really insane speeds for the NASCAR Xfinity Series and the Truck Series. The Truck Series was actually a lot quicker during their test session than the Xfinity Series cars were. I still think that Rockingham is a very, very good racetrack, and I think we would see tires torn through, especially if we had a couple years. Now, according to it, it sounds like right now that it's not very likely that they're going to host a points paying event in 2026. So the earliest you probably see a race at Rockingham Speedway on the schedule would probably be something like 2027. But I do have a little bit of a theory about potentially next year it's still being on the schedule for Cup. My prediction right now is I think there's a really good chance and possibility that they would host a race for the All-Star event. Obviously, North Wilkesboro has been the All-Star race since 2022 or 2023 when it came back. But I personally do think, especially since there was a lot of rumors and speculation that North Wilkesboro was going to host a NASCAR Cup Series points paying event on Easter for 2024, which inevitably did not happen. I think they're going to host a points paying event for 2026. One of my theories is maybe Bristol Motor Speedway loses a date, perhaps. I think the attendance was really good today, but I think Bristol and North Wilkesboro, I'd like to see a race in North Wilkesboro, but honestly, the Cup race may not be as good. But if you have 400 laps in a track that's probably aged a little bit, you might see some good racing. We're not sure. But I think that's one of my theories, and I think Rockingham will actually put on a really, really good product and show. Yes, I know the next-gen car right now has not been racing that well on the shorter ovals. And right now there's probably one group that's available. That's why you got to let the track age a little bit, a couple years. But if you let it age for a few years, the track basically might go ahead and start losing a lot of its grip, and a lot of it's possibly on putting on a bad show and putting on a much better show. When you have a car that has a lot of tire wear at that track, you can get sometimes some of the wildest races. We saw always a lot of wild races in Rockingham. The 2001 race that Joe Nemechek won, for example. Some of those races in the early 2000s, in the late 1990s as well. Some of those races were absolutely wild, and you saw a lot of tire issues at the track and some long races as well. To me, I really hope we do get to see a NASCAR Cup Series race at Rockingham in the future, because again, I do truly think this track deserves a chance and opportunity to host a NASCAR Cup Series event. We're just going to have to kind of wait and see at this point what happens to the future of this track. But to me, we know again that Chicagoland, they're rumored to have a date potentially for next year. We know that they're looking at some other old school tracks to bring them back. People always want Kentucky back to come on the schedule. But for me, I think if there's a track that absolutely deserves a NASCAR Cup Series date, it's got to be Rockingham, right? Rockingham is a really, really good track, and I think the track has earned the right and opportunity to get another NASCAR Cup Series event. So I really hope it does happen for sure, because I do think Rockingham deserves a NASCAR Cup Series race again, and I really hope it does happen in the future. Again, we'll have to kind of wait and see what NASCAR does decide on that front and whether they're going to bring a Rockingham date back maybe in the future, but I think the Cup Series deserves to be at the track. We'll see if it does end up happening at the track in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about another super speedway mile-and-a-half race. Now, there was a rumor that was circulating, I believe, on Friday night from Postman Wookie, who, of course, is a former mechanic in NASCAR, but has not been a mechanic, I believe, for the last couple of years. And according to what he has reported, and he says he has heard a rumor in the industry over the last couple of weeks that it sounds like there's a rumor of a track potentially turning into another super speedway style Atlanta-style track in the near future. Now, he would eventually, a lot of people were kind of speculating on what exactly that track was going to be. Some were talking about Kansas, some were talking about Las Vegas Motor Speedway, others are talking about tracks like Kentucky and Texas Motor Speedway as well. He said it was a fan favorite track that's had a lot of really good finishes, and a lot of fans really think the racing is really good at this track. Now, when he went to Blue Sky, he actually said, I can't say this much on Twitter because not a lot of people from NASCAR are on this page, but he would say it would be Kansas Speedway. Now, this gained a lot of steam and a lot of traction to the point where NASCAR's communication VP individual, Mike Ford, who is a senior VP of communications for NASCAR, he says that he has basically heard the rumors and he kind of saw the rumor kind of circulating, and he says that the track that is getting a sort of repave is not NASCAR owned. So that would take tracks away like Kansas, for example. Obviously, Kansas puts on really, really good racing. Plus, they just had a repave, I believe, in 2011 or 2012. So track is not due for a repave, at least for the next 10 to 15 years. So what that tells me is if it's not NASCAR owned, it limits us to a very small amount of tracks. The first one to think about is Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Las Vegas has not been repaved or reconfigured since 2006. And we all know that NASCAR's rumored right now to be hosting a championship race there in 2027. Could they be doing that for 2027? It could be Vegas, but I'm not sure if we want to see a championship race there. Then you bring up Texas Motor Speedway. Some people love Texas Motor Speedway on social media. Personally, I think Texas Motor Speedway is not a really, really good racetrack. So I can't really say it's Texas, but you never know. It could be Texas Motor Speedway. I think there's certainly a possibility there. And then a lot of people bring up Kentucky Speedway. Kentucky Speedway is owned by SMI. They haven't hosted a race there since 2020. The racing, in my opinion, wasn't great. The finishes are really, really good at the track, but the racing itself was not very good there. So those are some of the tracks I think about. I don't think they're going to reconfigure Dover and turn it into a super speedway-like track. Nashville's one that some people bring up, and that is an SMI-owned track and not a NASCAR-owned track. Nashville's one that could certainly be interesting, and maybe they have Super Speedway in the name, plus they haven't done anything, but it's also a concrete track too, so I'm not sure if we really could repave a concrete track. Same thing with Dover as well. You probably have to bring the asphalt back at Dover and not do the concrete anymore. But the big point I want to bring up here is this. We don't need another Super Speedway light track on the schedule. We've already got enough of them as it is. We did it with Atlanta, and I get Atlanta has been really, really good with the next-gen car. Every race there has gotten better and better and better, and I think the racing's been really, really good. Even if the finish wasn't as great this year for the spring, the race is really, really good. We've already got 6 Super Speedway races on the schedule. 2 races at Talladega, 2 races at Daytona, and 2 races at Atlanta. We do not need any more Super Speedway tracks. If we, let's say, reconfigure Las Vegas Motor Speedway, right? That's 2 more races. That would mean 8 of the 36 races would be Super Speedway-like tracks. A lot of people are already tired of the Super Speedway racing as it is. People get burnt out on the Super Speedway style racing when you have 2 races to open up the season, especially when the Xfinity Series sucks at that track in Atlanta. It's been really, really bad. That's why I think they need a wide open package for the Xfinity Series at this point. But we don't need any more Super Speedway tracks as it is. We've got 6 of them. I even think 6 is too much in all honesty. So if you're going to add another Super Speedway-like track, which they might be, there should only be 1 race. Personally, so you at least have 6. So then maybe you have 4 tracks distributed instead of 6. Take a race maybe away from Talladega at this point or Daytona. I don't really know. But we don't need any more Super Speedway-style tracks. We don't need any more at this point. If you want to do it, maybe do Texas, do like Texas Megatron or make it like a 3-mile Super Speedway at this point. But for the love of God, but you have to do something with the grandstands. I think the grandstands are actually built into the track. So you'd have to basically get rid of the grandstands and change everything up. And that's going to be a hassle. You're not going to be racing here at least for the next couple years. But again, we don't need any more Super Speedway style racing. We just don't need to make another bad decision. If it was a NASCAR track like Kansas, I would be angry right now because Kansas is great. Again, I understand Vegas, too, hasn't been repaved in 20 years or whatever it is at this point. But the track is really, really solid. The racing's been good. The racing's gotten solid. The next-gen car especially. Yes, 30 years a factor nowadays with the next-gen car track. But I think racing's actually pretty good. To me, we don't need any more super speedway style tracks. The race, we don't need any more. The fans are tired of this kind of stuff. They're tired of bad decisions being made in the sport. And this is another prime example of NASCAR, if they're to do this, making another damn bad decision they don't need to make. Again, let's make smart decisions this time, NASCAR. Let's not make dumb decisions, because if you were to do this and you add another super speedway style track to the schedule, you make a lot of people like myself mad. I think it's likely Vegas, in all honesty. It's the track that I predict, but I'm not sure which track it is at this time that they're going to change. I know Wookie did say on his account saying this is the same guy that called the fans bots, which, again, I don't really know what the bots comment has anything to do with the guy who works in the industry. But Wookie hasn't worked in the industry for a couple years, so I'm not sure what to believe at this point, but I really don't want to see another super speedway style track. I'm tired of the super speedway like races. Let's not do another one, because we've had a lot of bad decisions made as it is. Plus, an action car needs a lot of work on these types of tracks. Again, Atlanta's work, but Atlanta's good because it's unique. We don't need another super speedway style track, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about GMS Racing. Now, it was reported by the NASCAR Minnesota account earlier today before the NASCAR Cup Series race took place at Bristol Motor Speedway. And they put out a very shocking post in regards to GMS Racing. They talked about the fact that Spencer Gallagher, which we talked about in a video earlier today, that Spencer Gallagher is returning to the NASCAR or ARCA later this year, including this weekend at Rockingham. Well, according to reports and what they're reporting, it sounds like the GMS Racing could be returning to the Truck Series in 2026. GMS Racing has not been in the Craftsman Truck Series since 2023. They sold everything off at the end of the 2023 season. CR7 Motorsports got a lot of this stuff from that organization, and McAnally Hogan Racing also picked up a lot of this stuff going into the year. GMS Racing in the Craftsman Truck Series had a lot of success. They won a lot of races. They won championships with Johnny Sauter, I believe back in 2018 or 2016. He won a championship with them. They won races with drivers like Chase Elliott and Johnny Sauter and Brett Moffitt, and many other drivers like Tyler Ankrum were competitive with the team, and even other drivers got the chance and opportunity with the team and be success. Roger Krupp drove for them for a couple years, and even we saw Chase Purdy drive for the team as well. Now, how could GMS Racing be looking to get back into the sport? Well, according to what he reports, it sounds like GMS Racing could be one of the multiple teams that could be going to Dodge in 2026. And according to what Breakard had posted as well, this is not the first time that we are hearing this, and there's a lot more to come in regards to the story. We know that Dodge is very likely and is expected to return to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2026. Now, according to reports, it sounds like Spencer Gallagher will be the favorite, of course, would make sense, will be the driver of this Dodge organization. Now, it's unknown, I don't think it was mentioned in the post, on how many trucks that GMS Racing would have for the 2026 season, but they would probably be a one-car team currently at the moment. Now, why is this a very significant deal? Well, this has major association with Legacy Motor Club. Legacy Motor Club is technically partly owned by Maury Gallagher, who's, from what Jimmy sounds like, they've kind of backed out a little bit. He's kind of backed out almost all the way at this point and still got a slight minority ownership of the team. But Legacy Motor Club was originally owned by Maury Gallagher. Apparently, Private Porno had posted in a comment section in regards to the lawsuit with the team, with Legacy Motor Club suing Rick Ware Racing. They basically said the Legacy Motor Club was dodging the question. Dodge. We know that Legacy Motor Club is trying to get a third charter for the 2026 season. I think a big reason why you're seeing this happen is so they can prepare when they do switch manufacturers in 2027. Because we know that Dodge is looking to get up to the NASCAR Cup Series in 2027. And we might see the chance and opportunity for the Petty Blue number 43 to potentially make a comeback and return. We're not exactly sure what other teams are interested. We know that Trackhouse is probably going to be one of the teams that I would have to think that might switch They are the second-tier team. Of course, Spire Motorsports having a much closer association with Hendrick Motorsports currently at the moment right now. We know Hendrick is really helping that team. Trackhouse, they have ECR engines, and they're not getting the best help currently at the moment right now. Plus, Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez, and Shane Van Gisbergen, I believe, are all not under contract fully currently at the moment with the Chevy brand at this moment and this time. So that's one thing to kind of think about on that front as well. I think Trackhouse would make a lot of sense for them to switch. We've heard RFK's also mentioned as a possibility. I know Jack Roush still has a big ownership in the team, but Jack Roush's ownership stake has him backing out a little bit every year, and we've been seeing Brad take more of the ownership stake as time progresses and goes on. But Legacy Motor Club would make a lot of sense to switch to Dodge. They need to be one of the top teams. They want to be a top organization. With Jimmy Johnson coming in and Jimmy Johnson not having brand loyalty currently at the moment, that would make the most sense right now at this time. But as for GMS Racing, coming back in the Truck Series, I get that people don't like Spencer Gallagher as much, and maybe Spencer Gallagher would not be my first choice to get behind the wheel of the truck, but if you're trying to start up with a team, it would definitely make sense to have family ties. And also, it's a big deal because, again, this is one of the teams that will be going over there. Now, I don't think that GMS Racing is the only team that would likely go over to Dodge in 2026. I think Thorso Racing is so very likely to go over to Dodge. I think that ThorSport is very likely to make that move over there. Because ThorSport Racing, from what I understand, they're in their last year of their Ford contract. They signed a Ford contract for 2023 for 3 years when Haley Deegan joined the team full-time because she was under contract with Ford at the time, and they were 14 for 3 years. None of the drivers at the team are under Ford contract. Luke Fenhaus, Ty Majeski, Jake Garcia, Ben Rhodes, and Matt Crafton are all not under Ford contract. Same with Luke Baldwin. He's also not under a Ford contract currently at the moment. They're all independent in ThorSport Racing despite being the secondary Ford team. They're a team that's known to be switching manufacturers. They started with Chevrolet, then they went to Toyota, and then they went to Ford, then they went to Toyota once again, and then they came back to Ford. I think they're very likely also going to switch to Dodge when they do come in 2026. I think Nice Motorsports another team to watch out for personally. I think Nice would be a team to keep your eyes on considering their affiliation with Trackhouse, for example. I think they're a team that also could make that switch over to Dodge as well next year for guys like Bailey Curry, Matt Mills, and Caden Honeycutt as well. I think Dodge coming in would be a really big deal for trucks. You'd have more teams show up to the track and more teams come back to the sport. And I think regardless of what happens here at this point, I want to see more competitive teams. I want to see GMS Racing come back. It's been a couple years since they've been around. Why don't we bring Kyle Busch Motorsports back at this point and get him in Chevy? At this point, screw it. But I think it'd be really, really fun to see GMS Racing come back. It sounds like there's a very likely possibility of something like this happening. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens in regards to GMS Racing's return. But again, it sounds very likely at this point that it's happening. When NASCAR and Nostalgia most of the time reports something, a lot of times it ends up being true. And I think there's a very good chance that they are going to be back in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series next year, which is really fun because it's another competitive team coming in. I think they'll have a really good chance and opportunity to showing what the potential they can have in the Truck Series with them likely coming back. So, that is going to be today's NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go to below that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What thoughts about GMS Racing and Dodge likely coming back to NASCAR? Learn your thoughts in the comments below. And what thoughts about all your stories we talked about today on the channel, including the potential for another Super Speedway type track getting added. We've got a lot of great content coming up very, very soon on the channel. Tomorrow, we're likely going to have the intros for the Xfinity Series race coming out for Rockingham, and we're also likely going to have the Truck Series race picks dropping as well. Wednesday, we're going to have a news video more than likely dropping, and we're also going to probably have the Xfinity picks dropping. Then Thursday, I'm probably going to be doing the schedule predictions for 2026 perhaps, and I've also got a silly season update that's probably going to be coming out really soon in the next couple of weeks. I've also got some other special content dropping about guys that could be going to Cup Series racing here in the next couple of years, probably later this week, and I also will likely have others fun content they're going to be seeing on the channel over the next couple days. We've got race reviews for Rockingham coming really, really soon for trucks and Xfinity, and the 2026 silly season predictions that's going to be dropping this Sunday. Got content coming up, people like Haley D and Shane Van Gisbergen, Cards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Junior Motorsports, Connor Zilish, not Junior Motorsports again, Chase Elliott, Bubba Wallace, other people like Eric Almirola, Chandler Smith, Sheldon Creed, Sam Mayer, Clay Farm, Matt DiBenedetto, you name it. We'll talk about all on the channel in the coming days and weeks. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.